and get started. So good evening to all of you, and I would like to start this evening by inviting everyone to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you for being here this evening. We are a school community that places great importance on connecting with one another, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. I've always viewed Lake Forest High School as one of the main focal points of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Knollwood, even before my own children were students in the building. I've felt it is a place within our community that brings great pride and also great expectation. One of those expectations is trust. Our students need to trust that they will be provided with a superb education that includes numerous opportunities for personal growth, along with reliable support from peers and adults. Our staff needs to trust that they will be challenged, respected, rewarded, and provided with opportunities for professional development. Our families and community need to trust our board and our administrators with ensuring that the best interests of all children are served and protected. Over the past week, we have experienced events which for some may have tested that trust. While transparency and communication are one of my highest priorities, I respect the fact that as incidents are being investigated, communication may be paused to protect the research being conducted and the identities of minors. I kindly request that every member of our community attempts to do the same, to trust in our outstanding building leadership when they are actively involved in serving our students, and trust that you will be informed to the greatest degree legally allowable as soon as possible. As school board members, the 7 of us have a unique opportunity to work closely with our administrators. We see firsthand, consistently and completely, how Dr. Lennart and her staff demonstrate their outstanding commitment to the safety and security of our students and staff. This may sound cliche, but I can assure you with 100% certainty that Dr. Lennart treats each of our students like she would treat her very own child, never wavering in her efforts to protect and nurture every one of them. Tonight you will hear from Superintendent Montgomery and Principal Lennart regarding the events of the past week, but I wanted to be sure and take this opportunity on behalf of the District 115 Board of Education to publicly thank and commend Erin and her team for their handling of recent situations. It is because of her leadership and unwavering commitment to our students and staff that these events were resolved quickly, thoroughly, and safely. I know I speak for all 7 board members when I express my gratitude and trust in our district leadership, so thank you, Erin. I have 2 other items I'd like to share this evening. First, I'm thrilled to report that the District 115 held our initial strategic planning meeting last Thursday morning. We had a very actively engaged session that included input from students, teachers, school board members, administrators, parents, and community members. We covered a great deal of ground in this first of 3 meetings where we dug deep into outlining strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for our district. I believe everyone in attendance saw the foundation begin to unfold on what I'm confident will be a well-constructed strategic plan for Lake Forest High School. As we move forward, I will continue to keep you informed. Second, I want to share that the board and administration are making progress on finalizing plans regarding the referendum that we will be bringing to the community next spring. We've completed the community survey and are using that feedback to shape the referendum in response to what you shared with us. We will be working over the next few weeks to fine-tune the exact details of the Facilities Master Plan project, and the board will have more information to pass along at our November meeting. Before I turn the meeting over to Dr. Montgomery, I want to bring up something he may not include in his superintendent's report tonight. And that is the fact that he was one of the 40,000 runners in Sunday's Chicago Marathon. And I know he had 4 young Montgomery cheerleaders, along with his beautiful wife, Blana, who were among the 1.7 million spectators. So I would like to take a moment to applaud him for his hard work in training and his success in this accomplishment. Congratulations, Matt. And now I turn it over to Dr. Montgomery.
That was fun. Thank you. If you could go to presentation mode for me, Mary Beth. And then I'll click. I assure you I was not the fastest.
It's okay. You did it. I didn't.
It was the most beautiful day for a marathon. I got it. Very good. No, actually, another friend of mine who was running is much faster than me as a superintendent, so no, I was not the fastest in any category. It was a completion goal is what I was going for. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will be brief, but there are 4 areas that I wanted to touch on tonight. The first one is safety and security, then a quick nod to a presentation I gave at a national conference, third, strategic planning, and then fourth, facility planning. I will move through them as quickly and efficiently as possible. The first one around safety and security, Jenny alluded to earlier. A couple areas to note based on questions we've received over the last 8 days. The first one is the district has undertaken a comprehensive safety and security review or audit from Paul Tim, and that was in process pre-summer, pre-Highland Park summer, and we had the privilege of having Paul Tim on site end of July to look at our physical plants, not only in 115 East and West Campus, but as well as all of the 67 buildings. And then Paul Tim and his team were here on campus with faculty and students on campus the last week in September. He is currently building out the key findings in the report. 67 will have access to their report in their October meeting. I had really hoped that it would be ready for you tonight. They needed a few more weeks to do that, so I will share the findings of that report at the November 1st meeting. That, I'm just reassuring folks that we have been talking about safety and security for some time, and the comprehensive review will hopefully give us great feedback. Mr. Noble.
Yeah, Matt, one other thing I would add to that point is prior to actually the shooting in Buffalo, I think it was in December of last year, there were discussions in the finance and ops around safety, and we asked to have those presentations, which were made in December and January, to our committee around what Lane and the team were going to be doing, and those were brought forward in addition to prior to then what even happened in Uvalde. So it's yes, to Matt's point, it has been on my mind, the committee's mind, and the board's mind for a good amount of time in terms of the development, and I've seen nothing but good work with the stages we're moving forward towards, but I just wanted to, it's not been without line of sight for all of us.
Thank you, sir. To build on that idea, there's been questions about cameras in the high school. That has been an issue, an area of concern that the board and the administration have been concerned for some time. That was one of the major initiatives we wanted to address in the $15 million short-term borrow that the board agreed to last spring, and cameras were one of the highest priority issues. So people said, why don't you have new cameras yet? Well, we passed a $15 million short-term borrow in April or May of last year, I can't remember, forgive me. Jordan Salas, our Chief Technology Officer, has 2 proposals in hand, and we believe that we will have new, like to the tune of 325 cameras, both indoors and outdoors, operational by the end of January in that facility. That has been a long-term goal for the district, and I'm proud of the board in their foresight to agree to the short-term borrow and then allow us to pursue with that initiative. Timing is everything, though, and unfortunately, it would have been great to have more cameras for the last week and a half. But that being said, I don't want anybody to think that we are not moving forward on that issue or it wasn't previously identified, because that couldn't be farther from the truth. Additional elements I just want to touch on is that we have and continue to have additional staff stationed at both the front and rear commons, including security at arrival and dismissal. All other entrances are locked, and we are fortunate, I would argue beyond fortunate, Erin and her team, and Lane in particular, that 4 out of our 6 safety and security personnel are retired police officers. So when I start adding police officers on a regular basis just to address concerns, and the I is really a we, forgive me for saying I. When we start building out that, remember that 4 of our 6 folks that are there every day are trained police officers who are retired, and I think that is a tremendous value add to that building. I will finish this topic with just commending, and I'm not going to make Dr. Leonard cry, but I want to say how impressed I am with her, the team, and when you add the communication support from Melissa and Julia that those 2 plus Julia have built out over the last week, folks, it is unparalleled the level of communication that we're able to provide. Some people may not be thrilled that we haven't pulled back the veil and given all of the details because of the investigative process, but that's the investigative process. I remain incredibly impressed by the level of dedication and support that team has provided to make sure that the community has been as informed as we could keep them, and there will be more communication coming out of my office later this week. I will get off my soapbox and move on to something a little lighter, which is the Patel Conference, and I just want to celebrate the fact that we were invited to present on our portrait of a graduate, or we call it a portrait of a learner, at the national level to highlight the work that we did this past spring. And there was about 50 to 75 people in the presentation. And the goals of the presentation, and I presented with the Chief Academic Officer for Patel for Kids. We wanted to share the tri-district approach we did between 65, 67, and 115. We wanted to talk about strategic planning and how we were engaging that work, and then really leverage the room on how we could learn together. And there were people in the room who have done a portrait, who have done a strat plan, and some who've done neither. And we collaborated together and just sharing our story. The fact that Patel asked us to share the story and to partner with other forward-minded folks was an honor, and I couldn't have been prouder of the work that these districts have engaged in and the fact that I was given the chance to celebrate our work at the national level. Speaking of strategic planning, the first strategic planning meeting was this past week, and we had both strategic planning for 65 and 67 and 115, forgive me. And we are doing them on the same day, oscillating them in each meeting, either AM or PM, to try to accommodate as many different participants as possible with their working schedule if they are working during the day. The next meeting is on November 3rd with the final, I'm going to use that term loosely because there may be a 4th one, but the 3rd meeting would be on January 10th. Jenny alluded to the fact that we looked at what we're doing really well and what our areas of growth are, and then what are the threats that are going to potentially get in the way from those areas of growth. And there were 50 plus people from each district, and there was, I think the 115, there was over 300 comments that were added around those topics, and right now Patel is trying to synthesize from a qualitative lens trends that have emerged from those individual feedbacks as well as the collective group think. Here are some pictures of that event. We had both students and adults and stakeholder representation from various stakeholders across the community. Facility master planning. Jenny talked about the idea that we are looking at a referendum potentially in April. We are getting much closer to actually making a decision. Please expect a final decision, I'm going to say December. But we spent tonight in workshop looking at the key findings from the recent Fallon phone and SMS text poll, and here are some of the key findings, and I'm just going to talk through a couple of them for you. The first thing I want to talk about is a majority of the community agrees that everyone in the community benefits, whether or not they have children in school, and that's an important component, that Lake Forest Community High School contributes to stable property values, has a good reputation, and contributes to a strong community and greater civic pride. And when I say a majority, to be specific, 82.3% of those surveyed believe that. Next point I would add is a majority, 62 to 65% of the community agrees that a referendum is important because maintaining the facility with plumbing, roofing, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, climate control, windows, ensure better teaching and learning environments, and it allows us to prevent shifting capital improvement money from teaching and learning. So they want to acknowledge that investing in a referendum protects the level of excellence that we're able to provide in the classroom, and we're not robbing that fund to keep the building operational. 65.7% of the community support the idea of maintaining and modernizing our school building, but 50% or 59% of the community also believe that taxes are high. This tells us that while our community supports our schools and this initiative, we, the 8 of us, must present a plan that honors our taxpayers' investment. So we are looking at this through an exceptionally critical lens to find the sweet spot where we can get the majority of our taxpayers and ultimately voters to support a referendum in April. So stay tuned. We will keep dripping information to you as a community as we get closer to the decision. And that concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Okay, now we have the Lake Forest High School updates. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Am I on? Okay, perfect. Hi. I think we're getting my slideshow pulled up right now. And as you know, we have, oh, can we back up to the beginning of it? Great. And then we'll do presenter view. As you know, we have a new format too, where we'll actually go through the celebrations, and then I'll just give you a few key updates, and then we also have our spotlight where we will be hearing from some of our students. So excited to be presenting that information. I'm going to go on record as saying I'm not operating on a ton of sleep right now because I too have run a marathon, just not the same one. Maybe, right? But I'm going to try to be as chipper as I typically am, or at least I believe I am. First of all, a few celebrations. Pride and Laney could not make it tonight, so I'm going to do the best job I can of going through their celebrations with you. These were the things that they wanted to point out, one of which I can't wait to get to. All right, so we had a successful homecoming week. I think we were right in the middle of it whenever we were here presenting the last time. Great pep rally. In the Spirit Week, lots of students participated, lots of school spirit happening at Lake Forest High School. They wanted me to mention this was going to be the highlight to their presentation. Last year, as you remember, I was the musical chairs champion. I think I mentioned that. And it was really something that was a point of pride for me as a new principal at Lake Forest. And this year, whenever they asked me to participate, I noticed that Dr. Montgomery was going to participate. So I was like, you know, it's not fair if I participate, because when I win again, then everyone's going to say we can't do musical chairs anymore. So Dr. Montgomery, I'm going to give him a fair shot at winning. He's my boss. It's like you let your boss win at least once. And so
I think you should stop the story here.
Proudly, I was cheering along as I watched my fearless leader walk out in front of our beautiful students. And the music started, and Dr. Montgomery walked around. What were there, maybe 20, how many do you think? 20, 25 people of our staff members playing musical chairs. And guess what? First time, music stops. Who's out? First one. I almost jumped in anyway because I thought, well, now I can just go reclaim my title, but I just let it go on. But they wanted to mention that and tell that story. They said the students, when they asked their friends, what should I talk about, that Dr. Montgomery was the first one out in musical chairs.
My self-goal was not get hurt for the marathon and don't be the first one
yeah.
out. I made 50% of the goals.
So they weren't going to mention it, but they were going to have a little snicker about it. I wanted to mention it, though. Fun football games. Lots of successful senior nights are happening right now. I just left soccer earlier tonight. It was fun it was definitely fun to get to shake the hands of our seniors there, and it was JV and varsity soccer. Sports, clubs, activities. We just went through our pilot club process. A lot of new pilot clubs will be started this year. We had National Merit Scholarship semifinalists who were named, and we also had some National Merit Scholars. They've been in the recent Fan Scouts. And then we had our first senior breakfast recently, so lots to celebrate about being a scout, and especially Pride and Laney wanted to mention being seniors. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to do mine at the same time. All right, so just some reflections, and I know that this is something that many have received my email this afternoon, my many emails over the course of the last 5 days now, 5 days. And it's been a different time, and it's been a lot of hard work from our team, from Melissa and our communications office, as well as us just working really hard to make sure that we were trying to resolve the incidents as quickly as we possibly could, maintaining as much integrity and investigation, as well as maintaining the confidentiality that we needed to. Something that I did want to go on record as saying, and I've put it in several of my communications, that see something, say something. I do not want to get emotional right now, but our students, our scouts, have come through over and over again over the last 5 days, not just in what's been occurring with these incidents, but just in follow-up emails to me, where maybe I've disappointed our students, and I would never want to disappoint our students in the messaging that I've given, but I've disappointed, but they want to open up a dialogue with me in ways that I can do better. I've just appreciated the vulnerability, I've appreciated the candor, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation in ways that we can improve. I can improve in communication. I can help make sure that our scouts feel safe and loved because they deserve it. But I want to tell you just how proud we are as a community of our students, because really over the last 5 days it's been about students coming forward time and time again. And many more things to come, I know, but I'm just very proud of our students. So National Custodian Day was October 2nd. I feel like we spend a lot of time celebrating many parts of our community, but we don't often get to say it for our custodians. What makes Lake Forest look beautiful, I think, every single day are those people who get to work. They open the building in the morning. They're there on the weekends and at night. So happy National Custodian Day, a little bit late. If you see a custodian, always thank them. End of the quarter is approaching, I think, Friday, right? So students, make sure that you're taking advantage of any time you have to get those last-minute assignments in, do some last-minute learning, too. We're going to be, our play will be opening, Failure, a Love Story. This weekend. Our students have been hard at work, from the tech crew all the way to the actors. I hope that many in our community come out and enjoy our students as they perform. Virtual parent-teacher conferences are coming up. I think that you probably got the notice for those today. So those of you who are watching, make sure that you sign up for a slot. And something that we've been encouraging, if you'd like for your student to participate alongside you, I think it's always great whenever we model the partnership that we have, parents and teachers, and we model that in front of our students too. Scouting Your Future is also going to be on Thursday during parent-teacher conferences. I think there are lots of great panels that have been set up. When we actually pushed out the information of Fan Scout, another shout out to the community, a lot of our community members volunteered and reached out. The APT was actually saying it became a little overwhelming, the number of our parents in our community who wanted to step up and serve on a panel, talk about their careers, talk about what they're doing. So thank you again. That's something that you don't see a lot. So the fact that they were wondering, oh my gosh, I have a typo on the next one. The fact that they were wondering what they were, they were wanting to serve the community in that way. And the APT was wondering, do I have too many? Do I not have too many? And thinking about how they could use these parents in other ways too. This shows you that I have not been sleeping, this next line. But you know what, I'm going to. Starting tonight, I'm going to. I was told just a minute ago, Erin, please let's remember to talk about the Grateful Market because Dr. Montgomery didn't have the celebration slide. So Erin added the Grateful Market and just a few minutes ago, and look how I spelled it. That is great. That's a word. So hey, so let's forgive me for that. But we're really excited. This Sunday, we will have our third second annual, but I know this is the third year where we've been addressing food insecurity in a neighboring community. Our second annual Grateful Market. Last year when I attended, it's just amazing to see our students who are there helping in a variety of ways, whether they're making churros or they're, running bingo, or they're playing soccer, or helping to make sure that we're replenishing what we're actually, or the products that we're offering. It's an amazing day where our community is helping to serve another community. So I'm excited about it this Sunday, and thank you so much for the many donations that we've already had. I just wanted to remind everyone, and I've been doing this in my parent meetings as well. A lot of students will be applying for, a lot of our seniors will be applying for early decisions in November. And then in December, they will be getting those decisions. And I think it's just important that we as a community, remember that this is a stressful time for seniors. A lot of them have, they will tell you that for the last 5-10 years, they've been dreaming of this one school they're about to apply to. They're giving their all to this application. And we hope that all of them celebrate in December, but this is just a time where a lot of them are under a lot of stress. And so for us to remember that, so if it's your friend, if it's your neighbor, if it's your neighbor's child, just making sure that we keep that in mind as a community, and we remain sensitive to just where our seniors are right now. We are going to have our annual Veterans Day celebration. I'm really excited. In my speech at the end, last year, Eric Farr, who was the Veteran of the Year for Lake Forest, he planned a speech where he was going to talk about a soldier he served with, so I say served, in Iraq, who actually died in combat. And he wanted to tell his story because he returned. And after he said he got on stage, and I had it written down, and I couldn't say it. I knew I'd lose it if I told the story of how this person he served with has really impacted his life and will always impact his life for the rest of his life. So this year I'm actually going to tell the story that he wanted to tell when I'm on stage, because I think that his friend deserves it, and I want for him to know that his story was told in front of our community. We have some processes we're also looking at as a community. We've talked about our school innovation and improvement plan. Those are our teacher leaders, and several of our administrators have been partnering around looking at various initiatives, looking at various structures that we have, and thinking about how we can improve them. And another thing that we want to look at is teacher evaluation, administrator evaluation as a community. What are we really looking for, and making sure that we're asking those questions as we evaluate and observe each other. We also want to look at our daily schedule. Post-COVID in this new world, is that something that we need to think differently about? So I will be convening a committee to come together. We'll have, I think tomorrow is actually our first meeting, where we're just going to ask the question of each other, is this something that we want to explore? And then also our course proposal process for next year is underway, and we're looking forward to really rethinking especially the independent study process in Lake Forest, maybe doing a little bit better of job of advertising that to our students, encouraging students to engage in that. So more to come on that, because we're hoping to revise some things to make it more accessible and something our students get excited about. So without further ado, I think I'm being timed usually. Am I not, Dr. Montgomery? Are you timing me when I start talking? I am so thrilled to welcome our Lake Forest High School English department for our spotlight. As many of you know, I am an English teacher forever and always. And right now I'm an AP research teacher, so I'm using my English skills, but always at heart will be an English teacher. And so we have the English department coming up, and we have John Waniger. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to introduce our instructional director, the amazing Kristen Carlson, who's going to introduce her team, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Today we have a great team of teachers and students with us. This is John Waniger, Peter Loveliner, MG King, a student, Brume, Elsa Dalton, Glenn Layden, Amy Zimmerman, and Carolyn Kahns. And then there were also a lot of voices in helping us. Do I need to speak into this? There were a lot of voices in helping us put together this presentation. We have a lot to say. We're excited to talk with you about it. We're proud of the work that we do. We're proud of our students and how all of that comes together. So I did want to start our presentation just to give you a unique perspective. I've been in 4 schools. I've been an English chair in 2 separate schools and a member of an English department in 4 schools. And a few of you heard me tell this the other day. And every English department has its own unique personality, mostly beloved. But what I noticed coming here is what makes the English department at Lake Forest High School unique is its independent streak. It's stubbornness, but I don't mean that in resistant. I don't mean that in any other way, but an absolute commitment to what is real and what is authentic. And when I start trying to bring in, jargon or administrative stuff, there's generally some pushback, and that's just because the student or the teachers care so much about who the students are, who they're becoming, and how best to reach them through literature and writing and discussion. So, at the Lake Forest High School English department, years 9, 10, and 11, we have 4 strands that reach every student. And the first 2 are more teacher-directed, and that's the shared literature strand and the analytical reading and writing. And then we have 2 strands that are student-directed, and that's the writing workshop and the reading workshop. And so we want to spend most of our time today talking about those 4 strands and then how they build up to the senior English elective or the senior English experience. So with shared literature, when we're talking about shared literature, what we're saying is that that's the poetry, the essays, the novels, the plays that the entire class reads and figures out together. The entire class is collaborating around meaning and unpacking language. When we are selecting our shared literature, we're thinking about, okay, how does it fit within the curriculum? How is it going to support the students with the learning outcomes? How is it best engaging students? We think about opportunities for students to explore multiple perspectives and multiple experiences. We want students to gain self-confidence in who they are and their relationship to the world. We do sometimes have literature that has some pretty hard ideas and hard language, but we take pride in the work that we do helping the students navigate that. I mean, that is the story of human experience. Why many of us became English teachers is because of that connection that we have.
So I'm John Waniger. I'm going to be talking about the analytical reading and analytical writing that we do as part of our shared literature. When I was in college taking my education classes, one assignment we had to do was find a quote that we thought was our philosophy of teaching. And a quote I really like and thought I would like to live by in my teaching career was a quote by Plutarch, and it said that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. And one of the things I love about teaching in the English department here is everyone lives that. Everyone lives that philosophy. And what we're trying to do is create critical thinkers, critical readers, critical writers. And to a person in our English department, everyone has that philosophy that I randomly picked as an assignment in college. So the analytical reading we do, it's all based on becoming a critical thinker and being able to analyze complex texts in a way to help make sense of that complexity. And so what we're asking of our students is to, sometimes it's rereading, sometimes it's journaling, it's always annotating, it's engaging with complex texts in order to help understand what the author is getting at, not just to understand the content, to fill that vessel, but to understand how to think about things, how to see the world from different perspectives and things like that. So that's our goal when we're teaching how to be an analytical reader of all the complex texts that we read in literature. In writing, it's one of our proudest things. For me, as a teacher, one of the proudest things is how we teach writing, analytical writing in our English classes. It's very step-by-step, it's very scaffolded. We teach students how to create strong thesis statements, how to back those things up with argument, how to use evidence to help support their ideas, how to do revisions, how to get feedback from students, from their peers, how to get feedback from teachers, how to improve their writing and therefore improve their thinking. The idea that students can then communicate in an advanced way complex thoughts that they've gotten from the reading is something that we're very proud of. And last year we did a survey of all our freshman classes at the end of the school year. And one of the things that was universal was how much students appreciated how they'd improved as writers and how that writing had improved their thinking and their thinking skills that way. And one of our other sources of pride, a little brag for a minute, we often get emails back from students once they're off to college, and probably the most common thing we hear from students is how much more prepared they feel for college-level writing than some of their classmates at their college. And that's always a big source of pride when we get those emails from students about how well they feel prepared. And so, like I said, it's just one of the highlights of our program is how we're teaching kids to think critically about text and about the world. So Peter's going to move on.
I'm Peter Lubliner, and this is MG.
Hi, I'm G King. I'm a senior.
So I'm speaking about Writing Workshop, which is absolutely my passion. This was the only school I wanted to teach at because of this program. Some of you know I was a professional writer for years before this. I truly don't think that you can understand literature or anything unless you do it. And so there's such a bringing together of the doing, the reading, the analytic writing. But what I didn't expect, and I noticed really early on, was the connections that we make with students. I believe, math might get mad at me, but we have better connections than just any department going because they write about things that are really close and dear to their hearts. And then they share things they won't talk about. And so the whole SEL thing, my relationships with them has just been amazing because of this.
I've always really enjoyed writing ever since I was little, and I guess being in high school and having a designated space where I could work on being creative within school was really helpful to me since it's hard to find time outside of class to work on things you enjoy. And I guess being offered that space and that kind of way to go through the creative process with my peers and my teachers has really helped me improve as a writer and kind of explore different styles of writing and different just ways of being creative that I wouldn't have done on my own. Like throughout freshman to junior year, I did things like I wrote an essay on the Troy 2004 movie with Brad Pitt, and then I wrote a poem, and then last semester I wrote a 12,000 word historical fiction piece. All things that I don't really think I would have pursued on my own without the motivation of my teachers and my friends who helped me grow. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's a really incredible way to grow as writers and be motivated to do that. So, yes, thank you.
I'm back. So another aspect, kind of in tandem with writing workshop about students pursuing their own voice, is our reading workshop program. And it's a way that we try to encourage lifelong reading in our students. At open house, one of the common, especially for those of us who teach freshmen, one of the common things we hear from parents is, will you please get my kid to read a book? Yes, we want to. That is the goal. So with Reading Workshop, different teachers handle it different ways, but the idea is that throughout the year, students get to choose, in addition to the books we assign as the shared literature, they get to choose books to read, Sometimes it shows up in journaling, sometimes it shows up in lit circles, where it's basically like in-class book talks. And the idea is just to let students understand that reading doesn't have to be something you're forced to do. It can be something that you want to do. And we've all had stories over the years of kids being reluctant readers, and then finally, especially through the work of our great library staff, finding books that they love and figuring out, hey, this is something that I could do and want to do. And so they get these opportunities to talk about books, to think about books, and most importantly, to pick the books that they want. And it's just an awesome aspect of what we do in our department as well.
And now I'm back again. So I'm talking quickly about junior and senior electives. Quite often we talk about them being senior electives. Most of these classes are classes that juniors can take as well. So it would not be, for example, English Lit, that's a senior-only class, but my film class, John's film class, has juniors in it, and then everything from grammar, creative writing. It's all driven by student choice, and we try to give a pretty wide range of everything from speech to what would be a traditional lit class to film as lit classes.
And the teachers who teach these are generally very passionate about it. Just speaking for ourselves, Peter and I are very big film people. I studied film in college. He wrote in the film industry and studied that in grad school as well. And so we have teachers teaching things they're very passionate about, and that obviously impacts how much the kids are getting out of it as well. And so it's just a great opportunity. And even some students like to double up. Rume here, he's taken all the English classes. So he'll tell you about that. All right, next up, journalism.
Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Layden. I'm one of the two advisors for the Forest Scout. And this is Elsa. She's one of our 3 editors-in-chiefs. We just want to talk a little bit about how the Forest Scout works. And I wanted to thank the board and the administration for supporting the Forest Scout and the journalism program. I know sometimes it can be a little stressful, a little messy, giving students the space and the time to produce student journalism, but I think it's truly worth it. It's certainly one of the best parts of my job, watching students come up with an idea and follow it through despite all the challenges that they face, and come up with meaningful journalism that their peers can read and to really reflect on what the community has to offer. And I also think this is an incredibly difficult and challenging time to talk about the news, but probably as important time as I can remember, at least in my lifetime, to understand how journalists are made and what it takes to be a responsible and ethical journalist. We really pride ourselves, like a lot of the electives here, on student choice, and we have about 10 editors as well, so it's a student-run publication, 3 editors-in-chiefs across 3 classes, and they're in control of the content and the stories we produce. They're editing those stories, having conversations with the student writers and reporters as well. And it's really cool to watch that work. I also wanted to share just a little bit of information about how we come up with our ideas and what the program means for us too.
Yeah, for me, the Forest Scout is super important because a lot of the stories you get on there are only told through student voices, and they're about the school, and they give the students a space to share their opinion and what they really care about and put their work out there. I've always loved writing, and I joined junior year because I knew that I wanted people to read what I had to say. The way it works is we have 4-week cycles, and you'll write 2 stories within those, and we pitch every 2 weeks. The pitches are really helpful because the editors run them, and they'll give you feedback on the story ideas and help talk you through it. It being student run is super important to me because it helps you learn really important lessons about writing, like sending it to the editors. They send it back to you with notes and feedback, and you have a conversation on the page basically, and get to know how to write good journalism. And I think both the editors learn and the staff writers learn. Like, I learn a lot from reading what the staff has to say and what they're writing about and talking about. So that's super important. Like, the leadership, you learn from it too. Just helping these students learn what to write on the page. And what ideas are important and need to be said. I think. Anything else you want to add?
So we are going to have Brume close, but I just want to take a minute to say thank you to MG, to Elsa, to Brume, especially since I sent 2 of the 3 of them over to the high school rather than here. Just they didn't know where a board meeting was. So thank you for coming. The 3 students speaking here tonight are, outstanding in the classroom, but they're also leaders in the classroom, and people pay attention to what they have to say, and they extend themselves, and they invite other people into the conversations, and so we are just really proud to have them here. Brume's wrapping it up, bringing us home. He's got a pretty difficult job, but we're proud to have him end it.
So now that I'm a senior, I can definitively say that English is one of the most important classes a student can take. And the reason for that is because it's so applicable to things that you do. So we have this portfolio that we take, where we write at the end of each English class each year. So I went back to look at that in preparation for this, and I was looking at it, and I'm seeing the exact skills that I learned over certain classes, which is, from freshman year where we had more critical thinking to my last year AP Lang class, where we had more, word choice and being more, good analysis on things that you read and write. And so I was thinking those are all skills that people have to use now. Because, like, for example, as a senior, I'm writing all of my college essays right now and, getting all those done. And I'm looking and I'm like, all these skills that I learned from my English classes are things that I'm using on a day-to-day basis. And apart from that, there's also, because of the electives, there are so many different things that, you can get into and learn from, journalism that there is to humanities, which is epic, by the way. And, so I can just, say definitively that these are things that I've learned that I can use and I will continue to use in my day-to-day life. Yeah.
All right, well. Awesome job. English teachers, you speak my language. Say that here. English teachers, you speak my language. No, you do. I could actually go on and on. I fear the rest of the staff will watch this, though, and think I have a favorite. But I will say I was a journalism teacher way back in the day when we used to have to put it on a CD and drive it to the newspaper place and drop it off, and they'd pull it up, and then they'd print. They'd actually have to print it, and then we'd bring it back, and we'd sell the newspapers. That's a rewarding job. It's a difficult job too, right? Because you want to make sure you're giving students all the space they need to lead, but also meeting deadlines, making sure they're meeting deadlines and asking those really responsible questions. So it's a lot of fun though, and I know. One of my favorite memories at Lake Forest is last year I was invited to go to a creative writing reading. And it was in the morning, and the one student actually wrote the most amazing story about sort of the solace of rock climbing and getting to a certain level on the rock. And I mean, she had the entire audience spellbound, and this was a pretty packed room, spellbound, and you were just wanting more and more, and you just got to see inside of her soul, and in seeing that, you saw a little bit of yours, and that's one of the best parts about teaching English, I think. And then the other story, she was, I think, locked in some sort of a room, and then she unzipped out and she went out for the first time into the world. Another amazing story, and again, just the spirit and the way that they read the stories, the permission they had to create. I know that's the product of the teachers in the room and the highly creative students. So I've watched Peter Lubliner teach the things they carried, seeing the notes, just seeing the dynamic discussions that he's leading. I'm listening to rhetoric in American language, and I'm wanting to, language, AP language, and I'm wanting to jump in. John Wanager, he has this amazing structure he uses for asking questions. The students have time to process, and then they go through and they answer the questions together. Everyone has a voice there. I remember Mr. Layden going into one of his English classes last year, and he had a graphic novel. The students were looking at a graphic novel, and the questions that you were asking and the thought you were inspiring. And it was in this very quiet, soft way, but the students that I was sitting next to, they had notes in the margin. The way that they were processing, I think it's just, that's that's just the beauty of our job. So thank you for continuing to be beautiful every day.
Well,
We'd
can we
love to
take
get a picture before you go.
Yeah, you're not going to want to take a picture, but I want you to take a picture. Is that okay? Yeah, will you come back here behind us? I don't care. Just make a face, but smile when you're behind me. Complain about it the whole way here. Yeah, I think so. We'll sit. I think that's how we did it in.
Aaron, you got to be in the picture.
Yes, Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron, come on.
No. Dr. Lennart, please, I'm requesting you come up here. After that speech, you wouldn't turn your mic off. You might as well be up here.
Wait, I wanted to say something before you all escape.
I do too, Jenny.
Okay, so John, I'm glad that, where's John? I'm glad that you brought up the most common comment that you hear from students once they've graduated about being writers that are more prepared for college level writing than many of their college peers. Because I'm a mother of 3 children that fortunately all loved English. And my son actually took English, I think six years of English in his 4 years at Lake Forest High School because he loved English. And he got to college, and it was quickly apparent to him that he found it easier and more interesting to sit down and write when he needed to write, whereas so many of his peers attending a university looked at it as daunting. Oh my gosh, I hate having to write. This is difficult. Your department made it fun, made it interesting. And I think that something else that I saw with all 3 of my kids, and my oldest and youngest are 9 years apart, so they were in the buildings at 3 separate times, but consistently in the English department, I saw each of my children viewed as an individual, and their teachers had expectations for each of them that were unique to that child. And I think that's really hard to do. But as I said, spanning 9 years, that was present in your department the entire time. I'll tell a funny story if I can embarrass Peter Lubliner. My son was in Peter's film class and loved the class and wrote a paper and read a classmate's paper helping do some editing that classmate had asked of my son. And my son was very proud and cocky, which won't surprise Peter because he knows my son well, and thought he'd just nailed this paper. And he gets it back from Mr. Lubliner, and his grade wasn't quite as high as his classmate's grade. And Colton went to Mr. Lubliner. Mr. Lubliner, I thought I just knocked this out of the park, and I helped kind of edit so-and-so's. I thought I did a better job. And Peter looked at me and he said, "You did a great job, but I expect more from you. I know what you can do, and I know what I expected, and you didn't give me what I expected." And that was such a lesson for him beyond a writing lesson that has stayed with him. And I commend all of you. I just think what you do at our high school is superior, and I appreciate you. I respect you. I'm grateful that you are there and that you do what you do. And I'm really, really so thrilled that you do look at each one of these students as that individual person.
I'll pick up there. Yeah. I think, a couple of the hallmarks of a great school are a feeling of belonging, having a supportive community, and having real interest in individual voices. And I think each of you do that so beautifully. I know every one of my children felt so supported and tested and challenged, and they grew so much in the work that they were able to do with you, and I'm so grateful. So thank you guys for sharing with us tonight. It's always the best part of our meetings by far, so thank you again.
Okay, now I have to add just one thing that Jenny said, which is so true for me. The difference between the way we were educated and the way that this group educates is that I was always fascinated that you had removed the barrier to just starting to write. So the piece that our kids being prepared, I'm not surprised. I was, the way we were taught was, now I am going to write, and it's going to be a 5-sentence paragraph, and I have to have 2 number 2 pencils, and I still to this day have that sort of mental hurdle. But I watch our kids, and I would watch my son and his friends. They would just flip open their laptop, and they would just start typing. You helped them remove that, the mystery and the barrier to just starting to put it down on paper. And what a gift you gave them to just be able to express themselves in writing immediately and feel confidence in that. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing. So I'll do what's not my job, anecdotes. My kids, so far, 1.5 through. I've got another half and then another one to come through. But you guys have been fantastic. I think I've said this with all the departments, and not to pick favorites. But every single teacher I've had the chance to meet with my kids, in terms of, I've seen exactly what you've said. It's been fantastic, of just the passion and the care that's present every day. I know there's difficult conversations and things that happen, but what I love so much about what's been happening through you guys, through my kids specifically, has been that you've not brought different opinions to them. You've let them discover their opinions and discover their thoughts, and I think that's the true measurement. And so from the strategy part, which is our job, what I would say, and I really enjoy, is the community that's being built in terms of what's been there and what we're trying to really do now going forward. Is it's all of us working together in an understanding of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, how the kids need to speak for their learning, what we need to do to create and remove some of the barriers that are there. And I think we've completely passionate on our side, at least myself, I know my colleagues, to do that and give you the freedom that you guys need and give the freedom for the environment for the kids. So I'm so thankful for you there, and I know we'll have other conversations as we move forward, but it is so important that you're doing the role you're doing, and it is absolutely understood and appreciated from me. Thank you.
I'll just finish by saying, I feel like I have to talk now, I'm sorry. It's Aaron's fault. I'll just also extend gratitude and appreciation from my own personal experience. I didn't learn to read until I was in graduate school, like really read and understand. I knew how to read before that. But to really read and understand and comprehend and draw connections with the world. And I didn't learn to really write until I wrote a dissertation. So having the experiences that you all described tonight in a high school arena is going to do nothing but change and shape the trajectory in ways that are unimaginable. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being present for students, and thank you for being a part of this family.
Okay, we are now moving on to the public participation portion of our meeting. If there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board, we would now like you to step to the podium. Seeing none, we will move on to our committee reports. I'm going to start tonight with the Education Committee and its chair, Dewey Weinbrenner.
Thanks, Jenny. We met for the first time this school year on the 20th of September. We spent a little time discussing the Portrait of a Learner, which is on our agenda tonight, and its 6 competencies and the process that came about, through which it came about. We talked a little bit, second item was our master facilities plan and some of the different options we had there. And the third and part, which is really exciting to me, and I know to Dr. Montgomery and Dr. Lennart, is the School Innovation and Improvement Plan. The work being done by Kristen Carlson, Steve Dunn, and and Jeff is really, it's super encouraging. So I can't wait until that group is here presenting to the board, because I think that work is going to really aid our schools in the decades to come. It's great work that they're doing.
Great, thanks, Dewey. John Noble, Finance and Operations Committee.
Thanks, Jenny. So we met about a week and a half ago, or maybe a week ago, and we covered the initial 5-year forecast, and we did updates on the current projects from the $15 million authorization that we did last spring. So we got an update on the projects, processes, where we're stepping forward, what's happening. So for this coming summer, the summer following. And then we started to kick around some elements within the forecast of looking at where our fiscal health is and where we are coming up around some of the negotiations and some of the things that are going to be happening operationally. So we're in good hands. Things are at a good point. We've got more work to do, and I think Jen's got some to-dos from that meeting around looking at our debt structures and what we're doing as we think about the referendum and we think about the projects that are coming forward for us to do. So yeah, we're excited about it. I would share publicly, I think some of them know this, but there is a lot of work behind the beautiful facade at Lake Forest High School that is happening and going to need to happen. So I think a lot more details will come out around that and the visibility into that, but it is something that I think people who drive by sometimes forget. But there's a lot of careful thought and consideration going into really improving how the building works, how it operates, how it functions. And I think we've got some just fantastic input and designs going forward. So that is some of the work we're doing. We'll be looking at some other things going forward in the next several meetings. Both I think we may hit before December and then one in January. As we talked about a few of those things. So that's kind of, did I miss anything? Dave? No? Okay, thanks. That's it.
Okay, and Sally Davis, Policy Committee.
Policy Committee has not met since our last board meeting. However, there are 3 items that are on our agenda that we're going to ask you to waive the first reading and go ahead and enact as part of a second reading. I'll explain them when they're on the agendas, when we get to the agenda part of the program. In addition, I have asked Tiana to convene just the 115 Policy Committee for later this month if possible. I would love for it to be before our November 1st board meeting for a couple of reasons. We have been pretty by rote, simply going through whatever the press updates are to sanitize and cleanse our policies so that they're in compliance with whatever changes are coming either in statutes or court opinions. But I took to heart the challenge from Dave Burns at our board workshop that we have another duty, and that is to really look critically and think about what's in our policies and read them with an eye toward whether or not they reflect what we want to be as a board. In addition, we are lucky to have Dr. Lennart, who has joined us from another district, and she has come now twice with suggestions of language that are not issued by press that I think are relevant to what we want to accomplish and are things that grew over time in her past position. So I think we need to recast and think more critically about our role. And so I'd like for us to take on one particular policy that Dr. Lennart and Dr. McHugh and I worked on, and then in addition, talk about how we want to go forward as a policy committee.
That's great. Thank you, Sally. We will now move on to liaison reports, and I'm going to start with John Noble and Ed Red.
Thanks, Jenny. So, Ed Red, not a ton of updates in regards to legislative, just because election's coming up, and so we'll get into some of that, I think, in a month or two. I did have the chance, and I've highlighted it in my little update. I did get a chance to talk with a couple of the legislators around our initiatives and our priorities, so those were shared around a couple different fronts, and we should be getting hopefully a little bit of help in regards to the mandates issue that we've been trying to push through and freeing up some professional development hours on the teacher side. So we'll see where that goes. The other thing I am presenting at the Lake County IASB meeting tomorrow night at Lake Zurich with Brian Harris, who was the former superintendent at Barrington, and one of the organizations we took our legislative priorities lead from several years ago. So we're getting to share our tri-district and our approach and what we've done and be able to share that at that meeting, and then a little bit more of that as well as some additional legislative process stuff we're going to be sharing at the annual conference in November. And then lastly, I did attach all of the resolutions that are going to be voted on next month. So those are part of the attachment. You will see in there about 8 different things we're going to specifically vote on, yes or no. There are recommendations from ISB's resolution committee that we can look at and ask questions about. So I would encourage the board members and community members, if you want to read that, that's what's there. You will also see a list of about 9 or 10, or I think, that were asked to do not present, and they did for various reasons, but all of their explanations on the resolution committee are there around how they evaluated them, why they did, what's pertinent, what's not pertinent. So it's a good working document, I think, to how the school districts and kind of the direction of what ISB is serving for the schools in the district. So as you have questions on that, I think it's a reasonable document to look at, but that will be what we'll be working towards next month to actually vote on when we look at. I've stayed away from my opinions on those, so they're just simply there as fact and what's going on. But anyway, so that is that.
Well, you'll get to share your opinion as the board discusses each of those next month. Thanks, John. Okay, John Venson with the True North Educational Cooperative 804.
True North hasn't met since our last meeting. They're meeting tomorrow, so I'll have a report at our next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you. David Burns, Parent Support Organization.
Just a couple updates. So the APT, I'm not going to try to repeat what Dr. Lennart said, but probably the biggest highlight is the Grateful Market coming up this weekend. So I think if you have time to stop by and just see what it's like, that'd be great to support it. If you have time to volunteer, reach out to the APT. Carrie Ann Rice is coordinating it. I'm sure they still would take volunteers and certainly would appreciate donations as well. So be thoughtful for that. It's just a really great event to support the food insecure communities that are very near to us. Another event that is possible too is they're supporting Fill a Heart for Kids, which is a separate nonprofit organization, but they're coordinating a sign up for that and just supporting it in general. This is to help create, they do a lot of things, but this event is to make Halloween treat bags to provide for these kids that normally wouldn't have the opportunity. These are foster kids, homeless kids that really probably wouldn't have the opportunity to go trick-or-treating. So that is on Saturday, October 15th, and there's a sign up on the website. The foundation, they have made it, I don't know if it's a regular thing, but it's been the last couple meetings, so I hope they keep doing it, is bringing in teachers that have had grants accepted and they've received the benefit of that, and then they kind of do their demo of it. So Coach Kat came in, who's a wellness teacher, and she had gotten a grant, I think 2 years ago, to get furniture to create a flexible and active classroom. And so her prop that she brought in was one of those kind of exercise balls, bouncy balls that you sit on, which I could use too because I kind of swivel around a lot, kind of fidgety. And so, what she was saying is she's been extraordinarily effective in creating a more focused, engaged, and more collaborative students. Kids that normally would be distracted because they just need to get that energy out now have a mechanism. And that's just one of the things. There's also furniture that can move around that really helps to reconfigure the classroom to facilitate small groups and collaboration within the classroom space. And then as an extra bonus, and this is something that I saw myself, is that by bouncing on the ball for her and there's a balance issue, you're getting a core workout too. So probably wasn't in the grant, but I think it's a benefit that our students are getting. So in the boosters, not as much of a highlight here. It's the volunteers continues to be an issue, specifically for concessions. And so they continue to need more and more parent volunteers and even student volunteers to help out with the concessions. One of the things that continues to be an issue is team parents. I don't know if everybody knows, but the boosters does support all of the teams. But in return for that, they expect the parents to chime in and volunteer for concessions and the spirit store and other volunteer opportunities that the boosters coordinates. And so really, if you are a parent of a student who's in the athletics, please try to respect that and help out. And then also, if you're not a parent of a student or a parent of an athlete, but just want to help out, they're always looking for volunteers. And the students too can both get this for volunteer hours, service hours, and then if they want, they can get paid for it too. So if a student does it, they can either choose to get paid or use it as service hours. So really good opportunities. And I was doing it last weekend at the football game, grilling. And, I'm not lying. It was actually a lot of fun. So I do encourage that. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to the action items. May I have a motion to approve the portrait of a learner?
So moved.
And I'm hoping everyone in our community knows what Portrait of a Learner is. It is something that we started over a year ago, right? Yeah, right. And so tonight we are voting on this. We've already really adopted and embraced it as a school, and District 65 and 67 have done this work with us. But tonight we just felt it was important for the board to formally vote to approve Portrait of a Learner for District 115. So unless you want to add anything, I think we'll just go ahead and Mary Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. May I have a motion to approve the board goals and commitments?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, these are on the website. They're part of the board packet, so anyone watching that would like to read the board goals and commitments, these were developed when the board had our retreat 3 weeks ago now. In honesty, we are meeting again on November 17th, and we're going to work to create some metrics so that we can actually assess how well we are doing as a board to meet the goals and commitments that we are voting on tonight. But tonight's goals and commitments are really an effort that all 7 of us, along with Dr. Montgomery, came up with. And so I encourage anyone who's watching or reading the minutes or looking at the video at a later date to just take a glance at those. And if you have any comments or feedback, please share it with the board.
Yeah, I just want to add that in the strategic planning meetings last week, I said this and I just want to echo it, that I have not, in a decade of doing this, serving in the role or the capacity of superintendent, I have not had a board that has so overtly committed to doing the work that is the portrait as well as One Lake Forest, and I am honored to serve along your side.
Thank you. Okay, Mary Beth, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
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 May I have a motion to approve the Beyond Your Base contract in the amount of $45,000?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I'm going to let Dr. Montgomery speak to this contract.
Thanks, Jenny. This is a contract with Paul Hanley, who is the Managing Director of Beyond Your Base. Paul partners with districts within the North Shore, among other areas, to help with the education around facilities improvement. And he is recently partnered with New Trier 203, Glenview High School 34, North Shore School District 112, Winnetka 36, Downers Grove Community High School 99. And he is going to help us as we continue down the pathway of how to best educate our community from a facility standpoint to ensure that we are truly fulfilling the Portrait of a Learner from a Facilities Landscape.
Thank you. Mary Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the contract renewal for Allerton Hill in the amount of $47,400?
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to let Melissa speak to this one since this is in your arena.
Thank you, Jenny. So you'll remember about a year ago, Dr. Montgomery introduced us to Allerton Hill, and we hired them with your support and approval to support us from a communications perspective as we worked to bring Dr. Montgomery's superintendency to flight and really achieve some pretty ambitious goals in year one. We believe they've done a great job in supporting us, particularly as it relates to establishing a social media platform. We did a survey in 2021. Our community told us they wanted us to meet them where they were on social media, in particular on Instagram and Facebook. And Allerton Hill helped us achieve, I think, a strategic approach. We still have work to do. We shared a couple of the scorecards with you in the board packet. You can see they've helped us progress. We have work to do, but we're very pleased with the initial momentum. So with that in mind, we are recommending a renewal of the contract.
Can I ask a question, please? So, and I wrote this to you up front, you don't mind me asking this here, so I'm always for supplementing our internal capabilities, either from a capacity perspective or specific expertise perspective. So if I remember correctly, this board approved an additional public relation role, as well as the external contract, particularly focused on social media. I would like to know what is the plan going forward in internalizing that capability, and why are we renewing this? I saw the reports, and they certainly speak to that we gaining some traction on the social media side. But how does that compare to your expectations you had up front? Have they met those expectations? Have they fallen behind? Do we have higher goals? What are some of the key performance indicators you're using to judge that they're truly successful and worth $50,000 and $47,000? And is the plan long term to bring that capability in house? Because social media is not going to go away.
Right, so thank you. Dr. Montgomery, I know will have something to share, but I'll just get started. So social media is only a piece of what Allerton Hill supports us on. To execute strategic communications on the part of the district requires a variety of competencies and capabilities. One of our goals has been to operationalize our communications efforts in the district, meaning being able to create content and editorial storytelling that allows us to communicate with our constituencies on a regular basis, on a planful basis, and to feed the new website, for example, that we've just relaunched, and to keep our constituents informed on a regular basis. So to do that, and at the same time, support the other strategic initiatives that are underway, the portrait, strategic planning, those kinds of things, we've developed a really strong partnership with them. And so while it's true, social media will always go on, and I will say Julia Polshakevich has done a wonderful job of establishing her own competencies under their tutelage. There are many other things that they are working with us on. I'll hand it over to Dr. Montgomery.
Thank you, Melissa. So I would add to that when I introduced this idea, I did not, I think, Dave, you asked me if I thought it would be a one-time, I almost positive it was you, I didn't go back and look at the video, but was this a one-time thing or an ongoing? And I said, I anticipate that it'd be longer than 1 year, but we would evaluate it on an annual basis on the effectiveness of it. They continue to, as you saw with the social media report, but as well as what Melissa said, they continue to add value to our team. Where I don't think, specifically to your point, Marcus, about when are we just going to, do we just need to add staff to bring it in-house? What we are getting for the $47,000 and $500, because we're splitting it with 67, is not only one dedicated person, which is Gianna Harrison, We are getting a team of people with Allerton Hill that if I wanted to do that in-house, I would be spending exponentially more, but I would say 2 to 3 times more to get the level of services with one contract with them that's split between 67. So it is a higher ROI by contracting with them than if we would do it all in-house. What I enjoy the most, or my biggest metric is, does Melissa and Julia have the bandwidth as things come up? So let's look at last week alone and the writing that had to be done between Melissa and Julia and Aaron. They were able to drop everything else while Allerton Hill is continuing. I'm just going to pick Insight right now. So the next print newsletter is happening. Gia is taking the primary writing of that task, and she's doing that behind the scene, meeting with our staff members and interviewing and building out content that then Melissa and Julia will say yay or nay to, and then build on it through their own unique expertise within the district. But that we're able to do many more things simultaneously and be nimble as things come up in the district, and that's where I think the value is. And if I brought all that in-house, it would be far greater than the cost that we're investing in what I anticipate on an annual basis for Allerton Hill.
Thank you for those explanations. I have no objection against strategic outsourcing, don't get me wrong. I just, for the board, I think it's important to understand if an ongoing evaluation, and again, I would say, you know, what are the key performance indicators you're measuring the success on? You know, what's your expectation, what they specifically bring you can't, or we can't bring in for our own staff? You don't need to answer that right now.
Yeah, I want to add that one of the key communication, so the social media metrics is one. The other one is a communication survey that we weren't going to do annually, but I said we were going to do biannually, and that will be one of the key metrics. Is the community, that's the biggest question for me, is how is the community rating our effectiveness with communication? And that will be the next big litmus test for, are we meeting the needs of our constituents in a greater manner than which we were in the spring of 21. So we will be looking at doing this spring or summer of 23 to see, did we improve or not, and then we can course correct. In addition to those metrics, you have my ongoing commitment that this is not a, like, we're going to review this annually and judge the, are they meeting our needs or not, or if we need to go in a different direction. And I thank you for asking the questions, because the community may not be privy to all these different layers that we have and the rationale behind it.
Last question, is it part of our budget, or is that?
Yes.
And Matt, one more follow-up to that. So as you mentioned, or Marcus mentioned, one of the reasons that I believe we brought them in, and I think it was a combination of expertise and then also capacity. In addition to like metrics on how we're doing in social media, can we also set goals or try to understand how we're doing that knowledge transfer, so that how are we bringing in that expertise? Because my thought was, when we did it last year, it was, we're hoping that they train us on what are kind of best practices, standards in certain things, so that we can start doing some of these ourselves. Now, capacity is a different thing, and if we need them as, you know, resources, that's a different subject, and we can talk about different strategies to do that. But it would be interesting to know, how are we getting our team up to speed with their expertise, so that we can at least have the ability to do it in-house if we wanted to staff up in that department.
Fair questions, and we can come back to that.
I'm not asking for an answer right now,
Yeah,
but
the
just
only
kind of consider that going forward.
The real time, one, I would never underscore the professional expertise that we have with Melissa Oakley heading this department. I think that the value add from Allerton is capacity in social media, but Melissa's expertise is unparalleled in what she's able to do. The Allerton is just bringing to the next level in terms of social media and other outsourcing capacity. So I just want to say that out loud, because we all know that, but it needs to be said. The second thing I will tell you is that we are seeing real time the training that Allerton was able to do with social media and what Julie is able to do boots on the ground now than what she was able to do when she came on in the role, I think, in January of this year. So we are already seeing that, and Melissa, you can speak to that if you would like as well.
Add one thing, and that is Allerton Hill serves a variety of school districts across the country. I think that's another thing, another huge benefit. They have a perspective that we simply don't have access to, and it's invaluable.
And just for anyone watching that doesn't recall this, Melissa Oakley does serve 2 districts, and Allerton Hill supports both those districts. What are you laughing at? Okay. Did you say that?
No, it's fun to be reminded that we do serve 2, so
Yes,
thank you.
yes. Okay, anyone else? All right, Mary Beth, could we have a roll call vote, please? Aye.
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 May I have a motion to approve the IMRF authorized agent appointment?
So moved.
Matt, do you want to touch on this? I know
Yeah, I'm just getting my notes. So this was, oh gosh, hold on. It was Carrie. Sorry, I'm just getting my notes from Jen. Yeah, so the current. She is funny, pretty and smart, pretty and smart. Got it all. At my expense. How nice. Thank you, Dr. Leonard. So we switched from Carrie to Carrie. So Carrie with a C to Carrie with a K, Steinhaus, who is no longer working at the district. We are recommending to appoint Whitney, who is the Director of Business Services, who you heard from earlier in executive session regarding the topic we discussed there, as the new IMRF authorized agent. You can see what the powers and duties are of the IMRF authorized agent, and they are listed in the memo 1 through 7. But the reason we are bringing Whitney forward is in her new role and to replace Carrie Steinhaus in her previous role.
And can I just add that I did scrutinize Whitney's resume and see that she did handle these responsibilities in her previous district. So she is an expert in this area, which we are fortunate to have, in addition to being fortunate to have Whitney on our team now. Anyone else?
No, just general comment that it would be helpful when the board gets the resumes of those people, because it's not top of mind always. So I looked at it too and saw that she had those responsibilities before. So great, thank you.
Okay, may I have a roll call vote, please, Mary Beth?
Aye.
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 Okay, I'm just going to remind everyone, as Sally mentioned earlier during the policy committee report, there are 3 policies that we are going to discuss tonight, and we are waiving the first reading of those 3 policies for reasons Sally will get to in a moment. So we have first this action item to waive that first reading, and then we will have an action item to actually approve those 3 policies in second reading. And I think that's when maybe, I don't care, maybe you want to, I was going to say that's when you can speak to what those 3 are, and it will make sense as to why we chose, as is our right, to waive the first reading. So, with that said, may I have a motion to waive the first reading of policies 6:135, 7:270, and 7:285?
So moved. Second.
May I have a roll call, please? Mary Beth?
Aye.
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 Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy 6:135, which is regarding accelerated placement program, policy 7:270, which is administering medicine to students, and policy 7:285, which is food allergy management program?
Second.
And Sally, I'm going to let you walk us through why we waived the first reading and have moved to the second reading.
So in all cases, these are corrections or required changes. to policies that already exist. And I'm going to work a little bit backwards. So 7:270 and 7:285 was a matter of bookkeeping and then recognizing that in order for us to be compliant with Illinois law, we needed to correct two of the policies in small ways in order to have them be consistent with each other and reflect the way that our medical personnel operate and to be in compliance with the Illinois law. It's that interesting. In effect, it relates to having our nursing medical staff have on hand undesignated treatments for three things. One is epinephrine, an EpiPen for anaphylactic shock. One is, I will say it wrong, glucagon for students who have diabetes, and one is an opioid Narcan. In all opioid antagonist. In all three cases, our medical staff keeps them on hand. Undesignated means that it's not a particular student who's bringing in a prescription, but rather they have a supply of them, and they are trained and able to administer as necessary. The law requires us to have this. It just didn't say it correctly in the policy. So, with respect to 7:270 and 7:285, these are minor bookkeeping changes to reflect what we're supposed to do and what we actually do. Okay. 6:135 relates to accelerated placement, and this has a little more of a convoluted history. In effect, the Illinois legislature has passed the Accelerated Placement Act. Props to Dr. Lenart and Dr. McHugh, who said to us, you know what, we need to have our policy, which already existed, compliant with the new Illinois law no later than November 1st. So our previous policy had been recommended to be updated sometime last year. For whatever reason, we didn't do it. And so Dr. Lenart took pen in hand, took the press recommended language that would make us compliant with Illinois law, and made minor changes that reflect the way that we actually handle accelerated placement of our students. In effect, the Accelerated Placement Act is removing barriers to making sure that students who demonstrate the capacity for accelerated placement to be automatically placed into accelerated programs if it's something that they and their parents and the faculty agree they want to do. It is, I would say, Illinois' attempt to do away with the history of tracking, which we all have plenty of recollection of. It essentially says we don't get to treat kids who we have designated as gifted different from kids who have demonstrated it. So it's lowering barriers. One of the things I love about it is the notion that you can have kids who need supports in certain subject matters, but that doesn't mean that they need supports or they need any sort of structured supports in everything. So you can have a kid who needs supports in one subject matter and be in an accelerated program in another. We are fortunate that one of the other press policies, 6:130, we never did adopt. You'll see that it's reserved in our board policies. It was for a, quote, gifted program. We don't have that, so what Dr. Lenart did instead is we didn't have to amend that one. She simply reflected both of those in the amendment you see before you, which we also then passed on to our council, who said yes, even though this is a little bespoke for District 115, it is compliant with the law. Having said all that, as long as you're still with me, Dr. Lenart, do you want to say anything about the work that you did in going through not only what press tells us we have to do, but what you also did to reflect the way that we are actually meeting our students' needs today?
Sure, I think that you did a great job. That was a great summary, though. The Accelerated Placement Act was the act of 2018, and really it called for a lot of public-facing documentation and processes with regards to how we offer accelerated courses to students, really K through 12. Whenever that act was enacted, what I'm told in Illinois is a lot of high school districts didn't really focus on it because it felt more elementary. even though there were some high school implications there, it wasn't a focus. It just became public facing, how you accelerate students. Well, guess what? That's advanced placement courses and honors courses, making sure course enrollment and the course registration process is super transparent. I think it was 2 summers ago, not last summer, so 2021, the summer I arrived. Was it 2021, 2022? They added a new component to it called the amended automatic acceleration clause. So this actually is something that high schools then, many high school and area around this area and across the state started scrambling to try to unpack. And really it's about high schools having to identify a nationally norm reference test that will automatically grant enrollment into an honors or AP course if the student meets or exceeds whatever the state cutoff is or the national cutoff is for that. So if a student meets or exceeds, if PSAT is the nationally norm reference test we use in reading, they meet or they exceed, they would automatically, not get the choice to, but they would automatically be enrolled in the advanced or AP or honors level at in their next grade level. We actually pulled some data. Our students, they really do register for these courses and they challenge themselves. It's not a lot of students actually that we're looking at, just given the current student body we have if we were just to apply the metrics this year. And we're actually excited about what this means for further identification of students, building out further supports for students who maybe typically haven't challenged themselves or thought about challenging themselves to take some of these honors courses. So really what you see here is just that we are adopting fully the Accelerated Placement Act with some tweaks, and then also that we have fully adopted, which the Illinois Department of Education was saying that we had to adopt by November 1st in policy. We're fully adopting our way of enrolling students using a nationally norm reference test.
Last but not least, I'm grateful that you were able to go through it line by line and ensure that not only are we compliant, but this is actually a reflection of what we can and will do for our students. I would not be surprised if you came back to us in a year's time and say, I now would like to make some minor changes to this language again. So rather than die on our swords on this one, again, I would respectfully request that the board go ahead and adopt it so that we are compliant and we know that we can deliver on it. And we will continue to wait for updates from Dr. Lennart, from the Ed Committee, and make changes as necessary.
Terrific. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so first question is, do we vote on all of them together? Or is, okay, so then I just have a question in regards to the 7.1.1.285 Anaphylaxis Prevention Response Management Program. I would subscribe to the second paragraph that it's not possible for the district to completely eliminate the risk, but I would encourage the administration to take the matter of particular food allergies serious, as it really impacts an increasing number of students, particularly to things like peanuts and tree nuts, and create a safe environment for them at all instances, inclusive sporting events when food is served at, for example, senior night, that the parents and the concession stand are responsive to those students or aware of that many students have these allergies and provide allergy-free snacks, food, and so on, and create allergen-free areas in the school. So I really encourage the administration to take an extra effort here, as in the past that has not always been the case.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just one question for Sally, but probably maybe everyone should know. How did this slip through the cracks from a policy or press? Does press do any kind of an auditing to know whether our policies are compliant to the Illinois school policies? Because I'm just...
They do.
Okay.
I'm
I was
glad you
surprised
asked
that
that.
this came up, and thank goodness for Dr. Lennart to point it out.
I'm glad you asked that. one of the things we talked about at our very first meeting as a policy committee when I took over is whether or not the current subscription that we use to press, which is the cheapest and the most manual, is in our best interest. And Tiana Adams, who took that role over from Julia Polshakevitz, and I've asked her to go back and once again price for us what would be involved in getting more control, a better dashboard, and less reliance on press to administer our policies for us. The only way today that we can figure out if, for whatever reason, we have a policy that wasn't passed is we submit what we want to press reviews it and gets back to us, and then they manually update our policies for us. Because even though you're seeing it on a Google Drive here or on the website, it's really actually being served by press's own servers. And so they have an enormous amount of control over the language. It's also very manual in the sense that if we send them something that they don't understand or we didn't answer the question the way they wanted us to, it goes into suspension. And it's only the process of going back and reviewing the history of the emails that we see. We told press to do something, press asked us a question, have I lost you already? So, anywho, good job that everybody flagged it. Super not good use of Tiana's time.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, Mary Beth, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're moving on to the consent agenda, and any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member. And there is one item that we would like to remove. Dewey, do you want to?
Sure. I think at least the packet that I reviewed, the minutes of a regular meeting from September 13th, 2022, there were a couple sections that were incomplete. So I'd ask that we remove that one item from the consent agenda and that we approve it at our next meeting.
Okay, so we will do exactly that. We will tonight be voting on approval of the release of executive session minutes March 2022 to August 2022, minutes of an executive session September 13th, 2022, minutes of a budget hearing September 13th, 2022, minutes of a special meeting September 15th, 2022, minutes of an executive session September 15th, 2022, and approval of human resources report. So may I have a motion to approve these consent agenda items excluding minutes of a regular meeting and workshop September 13th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Mary Beth. FOIA requests, Brian Richards in progress, Olympia McCall, Hodges badge complete. I'm sorry, as I'm shuffling through my papers to find my adjourning language. I do have two announcements before we adjourn. Monday, October. We do have one more opportunity for public participation if there's anyone that is interested in addressing the board. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to our announcements. Monday, October 24th, 2022, District 115 will be holding a special board meeting at 5 p.m. here at Lake Forest High School West Campus. And Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 will be our next board meeting, also here at Lake Forest West Campus at 7 p.m.
Jenny, may I say one thing? Absolutely. I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank Mary Beth. This morning we found out that Tiana was unable to attend due to illness, and I walked in first thing in the morning and asked her if she would stay. So completely surprised her, and she is here and has been here all day. And from the bottom of the heart, I just want to thank her for being with us.
That's a much longer day than you anticipated. Thank you for being here and supporting us. I appreciate it. May I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 board meeting for October 11th, 2022? So moved.
Second.
May I have a voice vote, please? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.